Hey there, brilliant people. So today's question is, how can I trust my intuition? So this is a really good question because this is often the major stumbling block for people to get started with their intuition. Mostly because it can be hard, to start with, to know what you're getting is actually your intuition and isn't your imagination. So one of the things that might help you is to review of what the 3 trusts are, because that gives you a framework for developing trust with anything. But in fact, for me, trust is a positive expectation with prior experience. In other words, you have a track record. So for those people who are used to working with their intuition, they get what I call internal calibration. In other words, they start to develop a sense, like they know what their intuition feels like. For me, it's what I call, it goes clunk. It's like when every part of me is lined up internally, I can feel that internal alignment as coherence internally, so that every part of me is going, yeah, that's what it is. So I may not know why it is, I just know that it is. And that's all very well and good for me to say that when, if you haven't worked with your intuition before, you've never experienced that before. So yeah, it's a little bit like, well, if you've never known love or if you've never known abundance, like how can you work on manifesting that if you've never experienced it, so you don't know what it feels like? So you have to start at the beginning until you can get that moment of calibration. So let me tell you a story about that. So I had a client a while back, and he had one of those jobs that he had to be at work on time. Like if he wasn't on time, schedules would be missed and it would be a whole thing. So he was driving to work, and we had been working for a while, but he was driving to work and he had this sense to get off the highway. So he just got off the highway. He didn't argue with himself, he just got off the highway. And so he went off, got to work, through the back roads. And when he got to work, I mean, he's sensible, like he gives himself a little bit of extra time. But when he got to work, they were relieved to see him because, of course, a little bit further up the road of where he was, where he couldn't have turned off, there had been a big car accident. If you don't know the word, what bingle means. And so he would have been stuck on the highway just sitting in traffic for over an hour, and then he would have been late. So at the time he was telling me this story as a great story, like this is like he really enjoyed that moment, which is great because it was a good moment of intuition. But I got him to stop and remember back to what it felt like when he just acted on that intuition. And he said, yeah, like everything in it was this sense of really quite a solid sense inside because everything was lined up. So that's what I call, like in that moment, he calibrated that. Like he got to go, oh, right. So that's what my intuition feels like when everything is lined up. And so after that, like his ability to trust his intuition, of course, went up a lot. Not only because his intuition had been right in that moment, I mean, that helps obviously, but because he could recognize when his intuition was talking to him. It was that same kind of internal alignment. So he knew to watch out for that sense of internal alignment, and that was a reliable information that came through from that internal alignment. So when it does happen, you want to stop and go, right, my intuition around that thing was correct. Because if you work with your intuition, you will have moments where it will be correct. How did that feel like? And then you want to really watch for that feeling. So, all well and good. But how do we then get to have that moment in the first place? So, I know some people have philosophies that, tarot cards are dodgy or something. But these methods, like the tarot card, dowsing, I think I've done a video on dowsing, so you might want to look at that. But these techniques, it doesn't really matter which one you use, but all of them, like whether you're using, animal cards or tarot cards or whatever cards, or or like a pendulum to do dowsing, or the old bent rod to do dowsing, like find a method that you get to play around with these kind of intuitive skills that you kind of enjoy using. When I was first sort of training my intuition in the early days, I got this pack of Arthurian cards because I have a thing about Arthur. So for me, that sat really well. The old traditional pack of tarot cards does not speak to me. I find the energy quite heavy, but that's just me. So find a set of cards that really speaks to you, and then you can practice using the cards, because it's not the cards that work. Intuition works through focus and intention. So what the cards or the dowsing or whatever tool that you're using, what it's actually doing is it's helping you like hone your intuition, because it's giving you a framework. So when you're working with your intuition, you are literally working with a set of all possibilities, and that set is literally infinite. So that is a little bit overwhelming for your mind to work with. Now, sure, if you do fractology, if you learn to think in fractals, you have a way to manage that. But most of us are trained to think in terms of right and wrong, or to think in terms of, what box things go in. And so in many ways, the tarot cards, dowsing, like these different tools, because this card means that and that card means that, it kind of gets you halfway there. And by then focusing on it, it's not that the card has the answers. It's that by focusing on the card, that will then get your focus in roughly the direction that it needs to be in order for your intuition to come through. So essentially, it's like anything else. If you want to learn to trust your intuition, you need to practice it. But to begin with, you want to allow yourself to just play with it so that it's not too serious. Because if the first time you go to use your intuition and you're trying to use it for a big serious question, like what should I do at university, or should I marry this person, or should I buy that house even though I will be in terrible debt for forever, or whatever it is. Those are really big questions. So because the questions are so loaded, your intuition is like a muscle. Like to begin with, it's going to be pretty weak. And I'm not saying that you can't use your intuition for those big questions. Of course you can, but you have to build up your trust before you can get there. You need to build up your intuition muscle, if you like, because it's only once you build up your intuition muscle that it's strong enough for you to be able to ask it those bigger questions. So, but when you're practicing, when you're playing with the cards or the dowsing rod or whatever it is, Runes, that's another one. Whenever you're playing with whatever it is you're playing with, make a note of those times when what you're getting is, it seems to be accurate to a remarkable degree. I mean, that's cool when that happens, but you want to take it to the next step. You want to stop and go, right, when I got that particular, like when I did that particular card spread, or when I got that particular pattern with the dowel, with the pendulum or whatever I was using, or when I got that particular rune came up, or whatever, how did that feel on the inside? Because that will help you. The more that you can recognize that state internally, the more you'll be able to trust your intuition, because you'll know that that is the state when you are being brilliant.